Happy Sunday morning, everyone. This is Garen with Awaken the World.ca. And first of all, I just wanted to say how happy I am that my last video on one of my two near-death experiences and a little bit of the talk on death seems to be doing really well, and it's generating some comments. Um, I want to start a Sunday morning live video. So if anyone watches this and can help me with the scheduling of that, how you create an event on the page and then attach when you connect live through the camera, because streaming from our location doesn't seem to really do it. I have to do, I can do live through the camera, but if I try and stream through another software encoder, for example, it doesn't work so well. So it's Sunday, and it's typically, the day I take off, day of rest after spending a week of creating. I need to take that one day. And, so I typically try and do things that I find fun on my day off. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't accomplish the tasks I need to do. It just means that I pick and choose, I cherry pick the ones that are particularly gratifying to me on that day. It's kind of like a day just to relax and contemplate and pick around at the odd task here and there, just to keep moving. So one of the things that came up when my wife and I were talking this morning, and I've seen this in many of the questions and comments. There seems to be a real confusion as to what you really are. And I'm going to try and clear this up for you. And, for those of you who haven't heard me talk in video before, I proclaim no specialness over any of you. Okay? And I know that a lot of people will try and say, well, I somehow know better, and the truth is each of us is on our own journey, and those journeys are 100% valid. I am not the preacher behind the pulpit for you to listen to. Neither is anyone else. All of these things can be guides, and that's the purpose of these videos. My belief is that our world needs to wake up as a species, and it needs to do so now. And I mean right now. That's my point of view. And every video I produce, everything I say in my posts, everything I write about is geared to that, because that is what I believe my purpose here is. And my background is exactly the opposite of that, okay? I spent a lifetime as a professional killer. That's what I did for a living, and I was really, really good at it. And I still fight that egoic part of myself, that soldier side of myself every once in a while. And I shouldn't use the word fight, because it's not fight. It's, I go unconscious to it. And this false sense of self that we have, okay, it's very susceptible to cotton on to what someone else is saying if it agrees with what you say, and go, okay, well, I'm going to listen to this over and over again. And that's where the problem comes in. We, in our egoic natures, are inherently lazy when it comes to finding out the truth for ourselves. A lot of times we're willing to take other people's words for things. And I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but be aware that when you blindly take someone else's word for it, you have given up who you truly are at that point. I caution my wife all the time, and this is what I say to her. I say, listen to what I say. Listen not with your ears, but with your heart. And if it resonates with you, you will, truth vibrates inside of your body in a certain way. And at an energetic level, that's probably the only way I can really explain it, okay, is that when you hear truth, there's a tiny part of inside of you that will stop and perk its ears up. And if you become aware enough you will see in that moment, and it will resonate with you when someone says something that's truth. And let that be your guide. Let that in intuition, and as I've said in a previous video, and I would invite you to check out our YouTube page where we have the whole video collection as well. And it's also available on our website on the front page and a little widget in the corner. I spoke about intuition, and people will say, well, you need to develop your intuition, and it's like a muscle, and those things aren't the truth. The truth of it is you are already a highly intuitive, powerful spiritual being. Your ego, your false sense of self, sits on top of that as an energy and believes it is you. It hasn't fooled you because you think that that's what you are. Your higher self doesn't care. It knows what the ultimate end game is. It's not worried about it. It knows that part of the journey here is waking up to the illusion. You see, we all have a magnificent future. And although I would not have you take my word for it, I would ask you to listen from someone who's been to the other side a couple of times now, and did the prerequisite work, meditating in the caves and undergoing rigorous training in Tibet. And at one point I spent 187 days alone in a one-man monastery on a mountaintop. I had to walk down about a quarter kilometer of stairs every morning to drop off my waste materials in a bag into a garbage can. And sometime during the day, the food for the next day would be brought to me. And every morning I would take out the bag of food and supplies. But I never saw a human being for 187 days. And I have to tell you that in those moments where I spent 8 hours chanting out loud a divine mantra, for example, you truly do lose yourself completely. And it's a wonderful thing, because despite that you've lost yourself, you're there more than ever. What you really are is fully present. And that's the beauty of what you are. So never doubt that your intuition and your abilities and how you experience your life are not valid, because they are valid. But there's a invalidity or a lie or illusion, Maya, that we live under. And this is this false sense of self. And I brought up the Dowel to my wife this morning, and we talked about, that one of the things that Lao Tzu talks about is that once you finally understand and live in harmony with the way, and he picked the word the Tao, the way, for a very good reason, is it was meaningless. There isn't a concept you can attach to it. As soon as we say God, of course, you get Zeus on a throne with lightning bolts, long white hair. And as I said to my wife this morning, it's really funny that, she never cottoned on to the fact that Christianity is actually the original white man's racist religion. If you look at every text, at every drawing, every player in the Bible is a white guy. God is white. Jesus is white. Mary was white. Joseph was white. They were all white. and I personally find that really funny, because the odds that there was a single white man around back then, except for maybe the odd Roman who would have pseudo-qualified, that's really about it. I mean, it's really quite funny. So I want to go back to the Tao. So one of the things it says in the Tao, and Lao Tzu is speaking about that when you find the way, when you live in harmony with the way, you cease all actions. Now, a lot of people equate that with sitting still in meditation for hours and hours and hours. But that's not the truth of it. And that's not the wisdom of the Tao. I'm going to explain this to you, and this is one of these moments where if you can absorb this and apply it in your daily life, your whole existence is going to change. And it's going to change with this next paragraph I'm going to say, if you can cotton onto it and really internalize it. You never were the person doing anything. There isn't a person doing anything. You and your false concept of self and your ego and that voice in your head, and keep in mind the only power that voice has is to speak. It cannot motivate you to do anything. It does not have the ability to coordinate the movement of your hand to wash dishes. Those things happen independent of you, your false sense of self. So I want you to step back for a minute and how about we do the dishes together? And I really want you to try this the next time you do the dishes. I want you to close your eyes and try and sense who's actually doing the dishes. Who is commanding and working the hands to pick up each plate and to examine and to wash and to wipe in a circular motion and to rinse as you're busy maybe talking to your wife or your husband or watching something if you're prone to having your attention scattered. I like to get right into the dishes a lot of times. But again, back to the question, who is doing the dishes? This is the wisdom of the Tao. This is what Lao Tzu was alluding to. You do not become actionless. You realize that you never took any actions to start with. And therefore, you cease to rail in your head up against doing the dishes. You don't bother because you know it's not really you doing the dishes. The dishes being done is an event. It's a happening. It's part of life. It's life living through you, which is the reality of your existence. You do not live life. That voice in your head, it's not living life. Life lives itself through the vessel that you are, the temple that you are. But you're not driving it. It doesn't matter what you do, from the most intricate work to the simplest work. It's a false concept to think that there's an I actually doing the work. It's all in your head. It's all in that ego. Now, if you can internalize that and take that into your life and understand that, no task will become insurmountable anymore. Because you will approach, my wife gets frustrated with me, and she'll be the first to admit it. And, one of the reasons why is she says to me, you're always right. And she doesn't mean that I always think I'm right, because I don't think. I don't spend a lot of time thinking at all. It just turns out that I am. And now a lot of people would look at that and say, okay, well, you've got an ego problem if you have to be always right. And you know what I said to her yesterday? I said, here's the thing, honey. I am not always right because there is no I here to be right. I simply observe from a place of pure silence within me, from that higher self, through the illusion to what the illusion's actually representative of, and then take right natural action. And it always turns out to be right. That has nothing to do with the concept of wishing to be right or who's right and wrong. But the results are kind of funny because, and I warned my wife about this when we first got together a little over 3 years ago. I said, sooner or later, you're going to want to watch, you're going to hope that I fall down. And I totally understand it. You're going to just wish that I would slip in the mud and end up flat on my butt. And it's not like that hasn't happened in the past. It has, although I admit it, it's been decades, to be honest with you. Uh, and so yeah, yesterday was one of those events where she was a little frustrated with me, and she was arguing a point in the Bible, and of course, my wife has been a devout Christian and very involved in the church for most of her life until basically 3 years ago, and now she's away from that, obviously. But she thought she knew her Bible well, and we were talking about Lazarus. And she said, well, Christ went and he cried with them all there. And I said, are you kidding me? He didn't even bother to show up. And when he did show up, he was angry with them. And the interesting thing about that is that, Christ chose to stay away 2 days. And then he arrived on the third day to resurrect Lazarus. I want you to just consider that one for a little bit, because we have an upcoming video that I've already shot that'll be appearing next week, and we're going to talk about Jesus Christ and the truth of what the man is. So, who is the doer then? If your false sense of self is not the doer, who is the doer? Well, the doer is creation. The sea of consciousness, the God, the creator, whatever, Brahma, it doesn't matter what word you want to use. We're all talking about the same ineffable thing. That's the doer. It's doing all the doings all across the world right now, all across the universe. And it's enjoying every single one of those doings. It's our, sorry, I keep bumping the camera. I'm a little bit movie this morning. I didn't do enough yoga last night. And, that's the doer. I see people arguing all the time on Facebook, and these are in the groups that we're part of, and these groups are groups that are supposed to be towards higher consciousness and higher states of being. And I see people arguing over labels. Well, I'm a light worker, and well, what is a light worker? And you know what? You are. End of story. I am. The reason I am stands, okay, is there's nothing you could add to that would do anything except diminish the magnificence of those two words. I am. So let go of your definitions. Let go of your need to label yourselves and label others. My wife fell prone to this yesterday. One of the groups that I recommended we sign up on was entitled Out of the Mind and Into the Matrix, I believe. And for some reason, my wife had a prejudgment on those labels, on those words. And she kind of screwed up her face a little bit and made a comment as she was about to send a request to that group. And I said, honey, understand what you've just done. You've fallen into an ego trap, and it happened so quickly you didn't even notice it. As soon as we buy into the labels, as soon as we accept that labels and what we have decided that label means is reality, we've lost reality. We're only seeing what we wish to see. And in fact, once I explained to her that, being out of the mind, right, grid is no longer utilizing thought as the only way of being. Okay, understanding that there's something more. And then into the matrix. Well, of course, if you've seen the movie The Matrix, the matrix is representative of the real, the totality of the whole. So, of course, it turned out to be exactly the sort of group that we wanted to be a part of. So, and I've spoken about labels before, and we're going to speak about labels again in future posts, but that's another thing for this Sunday morning to contemplate is our use of labels and how we define ourselves, because there is no definition that's permanent. Okay. Rumi said it best. The truth of earth is that there is no truth on earth. And what that really means is anything you define yourself by down here, anything you think is truth, at best is only personal. And it will not last. It will change and it will grow and it will evolve. Why? Because truth, like everything else, is not static. It's our need, it's our egoic need for things to be static that causes us all the grief. And we want to move away from those sort of things. It's especially profound to understand that you are not the thing that's doing anything. Even though I, as a convention of wording, am sitting here recording a video, these words are not flowing from my ego state of being saying, okay, now I want you to say this and this and this. I'm simply allowing what's there to flow out. We all do it. The difference is when we're consciously aware, we're not letting the voice of ego taint what we have to say. And we will know that we're speaking outside of that egoic being. And we know when we're acting outside of that egoic being because the thoughts and the words and the deeds will simply flow from you. You know, a case in point, oftentimes, and my wife struggles with this a lot, we have a lot of homeless nearby in Vernon, and they're dear to my heart. I've lived homeless myself and lived in the what our society considers the low end of society. And I have to tell you that there are more real people down there than there are in office buildings. There really are. But, you know, she struggles with, okay, well, how do we help? And I said, you know, you don't have to struggle with how do you help. The universe will put in front of you that which you are supposed to see and to help. And you won't even think about helping. You won't even have to process a thought whether you should or not. It will be instantaneous. We had a young friend of ours show up on our doorstep about a month before Christmas. I heard the door knock and I opened the door and this young woman we know, maybe in her early 20s, a beautiful young girl, was standing there, tears running down her face, and was visibly shaken and upset and asked if she could come in. I didn't even, you will know when you need to help. Because it won't even cross your mind not to. You won't even think about it. It will just be. And that's exactly what this was. And through the whole experience, I watched how my wife acted with her, and because of course I would not be the one to sit there and comfort her in my arms. You know, that's for my wife to do. I take the role of the grandfatherly advice when it comes to young women. That's where I like to leave it. And really that's respect for my wife, I have to be honest with you. You know, she's been through enough when it came to her husband cheating on her, and there were, you know, I recognize that as an egoic thing in her, but at the same time, I understand that, you know, she's struggling to move forward with waking up. And, you know, it should never be a struggle, but a lot of people turn it into a struggle. And I'm going to touch on that a little bit too. Anyways, when it comes to helping others, you will know. When it comes to everything in life, you know, Abraham Hicks, if you haven't heard of Abraham Hicks, Abraham is a name for a channeled collective being. And they probably say it best. You know, if it's not an immediate hell yes, don't bother. And what she, for sake of convention, means by that is simply that if it doesn't simply flow out of you without you sitting there nitpicking back and forth with yourself and really thinking about it, I mean, if there's any of that stuff, there's a pretty darn good chance you shouldn't be doing it. If it's natural, If you find yourself moving, speaking, action, thinking without any precursor, you'll know, you'll feel you're in the flow. Just let it happen. You'll do the right thing. You can't do the wrong thing. That's the truth of our reality. Okay? You are not the doer. You are not that small being. You are this glorious, powerful spiritual being. I want to wrap this up quick because it's going into about 25 minutes now, and I'm not sure how much patience my viewers will give me. I just wanted to touch on one little thing. One of the comments that came up about the video on death was that, well, if the afterlife is so great, why would you ever want to come back here? And here's the thing. It's only our limited egoic viewpoint that thinks there's something wrong here. Okay? And I go through this with my wife a lot. My wife is great fodder for like years of videos, and we both laugh about this. It's a match made in heaven. It really is. But at the end of the day, this is perfect too. I've died a few times now, and one of the things you realize when you get to the other side is this wasn't really that bad. It was short, okay? And it goes by really quick. And you're an eternal being. Trust me, it's only a blink, and it's a fun blink. It's like a quick little vacation. Imagine you go on a vacation where everything is 100% real to you, and then you wake up at the end of your vacation, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. That was set up? That was awesome. That's your life right now, no matter what you think of it. The minute you get to the other side, okay, that's the first thing you're going to say is, that was awesome. And then you're going to want to do it again, believe it or not. And you don't have to if you don't want to, okay? It's not God's choice. It's your choice. You are an individuated aspect of the Creator, imbued with your own consciousness, with the consciousness of the Creator individualized. Your ego is not an enemy. Your ego is a friend. Once you get by that there's anything to worry about, once you get by that there's anything you can do wrong, once you get by that you are the one doing any of this, you can start to make choices to live your life authentically in the way that you wish. But always do so from that higher place. If you need to think too much about it, if you need to worry about it too much, if you start and stop, really, take a load off. Settle down. Let life show you where it needs you to go. In that surrender, everything you've ever wanted, truly wanted, which is far different from your egoic wants, because those wants aren't valid anyways. Your want for an object was never for the object. It's for a feeling that you're hoping that object is going to give you, okay? That's it. I'm out of breath and out of time this morning. So, happy Sunday to all of our viewers, and namaste, and I see God in you, even when you can't, okay? And that's it. We'll talk to you again really soon. Take care.